Hi, it's Chris with Implied Music. I had the privilege of seeing the English consort do Handel's Solomon, a 3 hour long oratorio. Double chorus, full symphony. There was lots of what my Texas singer friend calls the bumpy bits in the vocal music, the bumpy bits. There's a word for it. It's called coloratura or melisma. Basically, it's a way of embellishing melody. That's what I want to talk about today. Well, there are a lot of vocabulary words in that introduction, and I apologize for them, but I think I can explain them. Now, almost everybody's heard at one time or another Handel's Messiah. The Messiah is another oratorio. An oratorio is a large-scale symphonic and choral work chopped up into individual sections, and it was mostly kind of a Baroque sort of thing. Handel, Bach, they all wrote oratorios. The Messiah has a great example of melisma. Melisma is a way of embellishing just a single, syllable of a song lyric into a whole bunch of notes. And of course, we've all heard Whitney Houston do it. Look at this little example here. Now, you don't have to read music to recognize that the lyrics here, "For unto us a child is born," and when you get to the word born, that long line just indicates that all of those notes are part of that one syllable. And here we go. It goes on to the next line. It's crazy, right? In fact, the sopranos are doing it in thirds. It's really beautiful. I blew it, but you see what I'm saying? So melisma is in direct contrast to a different style of singing or writing that is sometimes called syllabic. Here you see a perfect example of syllabic writing. For, one syllable, unto us a child is, and then we're off to the races with melisma. Another word for it is coloratura. You'll hear both of those words used in classical music, talking about this kind of, I want to use the word florid, but it doesn't have to be. It can be quite beautiful and really restrained. This is an example of Baroque melisma or coloratura, but of course, we hear it in contemporary popular music all the time. I just watched The Voice just began again, and those of you who know this channel well know that I'm a Voice fan, and it's a little embarrassing, but I do like it. I watch it. I love it because you get a chance to hear singers stretching out. And when a singer stretches out, very often they will interject vocal runs that come from the same idea. Very often it's bluesy, right? So summertime might become, right? They'll just add a couple of notes to the word time, and it's a vocal run. Look at a couple more notational examples. These are things that you probably know, and they happen to be from, in this case, a Christmas song. Angels we've heard on high. And when you get to the part where you go glow, that's a classic example of melisma. Melisma. So the idea that there's something magical about, say, a great sort of blues or gospel singer who's interjecting great vocal runs is that it's magical. I don't think we need to think of it that way. I think what we have to do is look at the roots of it and how we can bring it into our own sort of composing. Let's say we have a simple melody. I'll just drop something in here, and we'll see if we can come up with some melismatic or coloratura interjections. Here's a melody everybody knows. And then Now, if I wanted to do something melismatic with that, I'd have to work out which notes were in the chord and which notes were in the scale, and how to create this first idea, passing tones. So a passing tone is a really simple concept. Let's say I have this chord C. Now, melodic tones that are chord tones are C, E, and G, but they're by no means the only notes we can sing, right? The D is a passing tone. It's in the scale and it's between chord tones. Of course, there's an F, which is the same deal. The F. Here we go. E, F, G. By no means the only solution. I went leap up and then sank down onto things. This is a great way to embellish melody. My embellishment is, I use non-chord tones as passing notes and as appoggiaturas. I've got a video on appoggiaturas that might be worth looking at. I embellish the melody using scale tones above and below the basic melody. Let's go on. Again, I used notes above the melody, scale tones from below. Quickly looking back at the Handel example that I showed first, you can see how the basic melodic idea gets embellished by sort of notes that are above and below the central melodic idea. Here, the central melody is definitely B, and yet we have embellishing tones above and below, above, and then we go to the G and we see embellishing tones below, above, and then skipping up, heading to a C. There's the sense that we're embroidering around the note, and the tones that we use, that we choose to embroider around the note with, are generally tones from the scale that we're in. It's really actually a pretty straightforward idea. Now, let's say we're a vocalist and we're steeped in kind of gospel and American blues. And the basic melody is a simple one. I went from E down to C. Now, if I want to embellish that in a way that's drawing on a scale system that maybe has some chromatic tones, I'm going to use the blues system. So that basic melody. So the syntax, if you will, of the scale system is the blues. And the embellishments are drawn from a scale system that has meaning in that way. Melisma, coloratura, basically embellishing and expanding on an existing melody, is all part of our toolkit as composers, and also to some degree improvisers. We probably would be doing this on the fly, almost intuitively. But it doesn't have to be intuitive. You can dig in and ask yourself a couple of questions. What's my sort of boiled down root basic melody? It might only be 2 or 3 notes. What's the scale system in which those melodic tones exist? What are the chords? Is the melody note, that boiled down melody note, a chord tone? If it is, what are the scale degrees on either side of it? How can I create a pattern, a melodic pattern that weaves or embroiders above and below that individual note? There are great examples of this from kind of all periods of music, from Gregorian chant up into the Baroque, Handel and Bach. Mozart was a master of these long kind of expanded runs and ideas. Just the idea of variation in general is part of that. Contemporary singers do it all the time. And of course, jazz musicians are thinking this way as they expand basic melodic ideas. Use the idea, coloratura, melisma, embellishment, appoggiaturas, escape tones. These are all kind of vocabulary words which you can, research a little bit more. I've done videos on some of these ideas already to enrich and enliven your basic melodic ideas. It's pretty powerful. I was so delighted to see this really long oratorio, this gorgeous Handel piece, whose just the length by its very nature kind of created a saturated musical experience for me, which I'm still kind of walking around with in my heart right now. I'm very grateful for that kind of thing. Well, I hope this has been useful. Like and subscribe, ding the bell, you'll be notified when I do my videos. I'll see you next time.